The year is 539 BC. Babylon has never feared an army. Its walls are thick enough to break arrows, its granaries full enough to outlast famine, and the Euphrates River runs straight through the heart of the city like a vein that never dries. On that night, a lone guard stands on the eastern wall, fingers tight around his spear, watching torchlight dance across the black water below. Somewhere in the distance, dogs begin to bark. Farther still, metal touches metal. Soft, careful, almost too quiet to notice. Then he sees it. The water is falling. Not fast, not violently, just inch by inch, as if the river itself is being pulled into the darkness. He blinks, certain his eyes are lying to him, but the water keeps dropping. Mud begins to surface, stone begins to appear, and when he leans over the wall for one final look, he sees them. Shapes, dozens of them, walking through the riverbed in silence, straight toward Babylon. No war cries, no drums, no banners. Just men, moving through black water. And in that moment, Babylon was already dead. It simply didn't know it yet. The guard doesn't move. Below him, the water keeps sinking into the dark, inch by inch, as if the river itself is trying to escape. Behind him, Babylon breathes like a living thing. Fire burns from bronze braziers high above the streets. Temple bells roll across the night. Somewhere in the lower city, a priest drags a blade across the throat of a lamb, and warm blood spills across black stone, polished by centuries of sacrifice. The smell rises fast, copper and smoke, until cedar resin and burning incense bury it beneath something sweeter. In the markets, silver changes hands under torchlight. In the palaces, wine spills across gold. In the temples, voices rise toward gods who have watched empires die before. And above it all stand the walls, massive, silent, untouched. Men sleep behind them, women pray behind them, children dream behind them, because in Babylon, walls were not stone, walls were faith. Faith that no army could cross them. Faith that no king could break them. Faith that this city would stand forever. But far beyond the eastern horizon, beneath dust, iron, and silence, Cyrus the Great was already marching. Far beyond Babylon's walls, beyond the rivers, beyond the temples, beyond the reach of men who believed their gods still listened, a child had already been born, not in marble halls, not beneath gold, but under open sky, where the nights were cold enough to kill and the wind never stopped speaking. The tribes said he didn't cry when he came into the world. They said he opened his eyes and stared into the fire as if he recognized it. Some called it a story. Others called it a warning. By the time he could walk, he was already riding. By the time he could speak, men twice his age had already learned not to interrupt him. He grew beneath the rule of the Medes, watching kings feast, watching old empires rot from the inside, watching men mistake comfort for power, and when he finally moved, kingdoms didn't resist, they collapsed. The Medes vanished first, then Sardis fell, and the gold of kings passed into his hands before the smoke had even cleared. By then, merchants no longer spoke his name in conversation. They spoke it in lowered voices, like a prayer or a curse. Cyrus the Great wasn't marching toward Babylon. He was marching toward history, and Cyrus left his first warning at Battle of Opis. By dawn, the river was already carrying bodies. Men stumbled through mud so dark it no longer looked like earth. Horses screamed. Shields vanished under blood. The wounded reached for help and were crushed beneath the boots of their own army before anyone could pull them back. Some tried to run. Some tried to pray. Most never finished either. By midday, the screams were gone. Not because the killing had stopped, but because there was no one left screaming. When the survivors finally rode back to Babylon, no one recognized them. Their armor was broken. Their faces were gray. Their hands would not stop shaking. One of them tried to speak at the city gate and vomited before a single word came out. That was the moment Babylon understood. Cyrus was not coming to besiege the city. He was coming to erase it. But inside Babylon, no one wanted to believe that. That night, wine still poured into gold cups. Musicians still played beneath painted ceilings. Laughter still echoed through halls built by kings who believed stone could outlive fear. In the upper palace, servants moved between firelight and silk while nobles drank, argued, and swore that Babylon had survived worse. Some still spoke the name of Nabonidus as if a king could stop what was already moving toward them. Others simply raised their cups higher, pretending the world outside the walls no longer existed. And maybe that was the cruelest part, because while Babylon drank, Cyrus never spoke. No war drums, no horns, no battle cries in the dark, only thousands of men working in silence beneath the moon, iron biting into earth, shovels cutting through wet soil, water shifting where no water should move, inch by inch, channel by channel. The Euphrates River began to leave the city, and by the time Babylon noticed, the river was already gone. And on that night, in October, 539 BC, Cyrus the Great stopped being a rumor. He became the thing walking beneath Babylon. The water of the Euphrates River had already dropped. Persian soldiers stepped into the riverbed. Mud climbed to their ankles. Cold, thick, black. No torch, no war drums, no voices, only steel brushing steel, and the sound of boots sinking deeper into the earth. Then the first gate opened, and Babylon never saw it coming. Inside the city, panic spread street by street. Guards were cut down before they could scream. Temple bells rang once, then stopped. Men ran through alleyways slick with blood, slipping over bodies they couldn't even recognize in the dark. Some were trampled by their own people trying to escape. Some drowned in canals they had crossed their entire lives. Some died with wine still on their breath. Ancient records from the Nabonidus Chronicle did not describe Opis as a battle. They described it as slaughter. By midday, the Babylonian line was already breaking. Men threw down shields. Officers screamed orders no one obeyed. Then the Persian cavalry hit. Fast, low, relentless. Horses tore through the ranks like blades through wet cloth. Spears punched through bronze. Men fell, and before they could even scream, the next wave was already on top of them. Some tried to run toward the river. They never made it. The banks had turned to red mud. Boots slipped. Bodies piled on bodies. Wounded soldiers clawed at the ground while thousands of feet crushed their hands, their ribs, their throats. Some drowned face down in water no deeper than their knees because there were too many dead to stand back up. By sunset, the river wasn't carrying water anymore. It was carrying Babylon, and when the survivors reached the city gates that night, no one asked who won, because one look at their faces was enough. Babylon had not lost an army. Babylon had just seen what happens when Cyrus decides a city should die. And that was when Babylon realized something far worse than slaughter. Cyrus wasn't here to destroy the city. He was here to take it so completely, it would look like nothing had happened. Before sunrise in October, 539 BC, Persian soldiers were already moving through the inner streets. Fast, silent, controlled. Guards who survived the first attack were dragged into shadows and never seen again. Palace runners disappeared between corridors before their warnings ever reached the throne. Priests inside the temples kept chanting, not knowing the empire they served had already died beneath their feet. By the time the eastern sky began to turn gray, the gates, the armories, the watchtowers, everything that mattered, already belonged to Cyrus the Great. And then morning came. Shop doors opened. Smoke rose from kitchen fires. Children ran through alleyways still half asleep, and for a few seconds, nobody understood why the city felt wrong. Then, someone looked up. The banners were different. Not Babylonian, Persian, hanging over the same walls that had protected them for generations. Ancient accounts, including later traditions tied to the Cyrus cylinder, describe Cyrus entering Babylon with far less destruction than most conquerors of the age. No city-wide fire, no streets buried in corpses, no final stand. And somehow, that made it worse, because there was no moment Babylon could point to and say, that was when we lost. No, they lost while drinking, while sleeping, while praying, while believing stone walls and old gods still made them untouchable. And by the time the sun rose over Babylon, the greatest city on earth was still standing, but it no longer belonged to the people who built it. And when the sun finally rose over Babylon, Cyrus the Great walked through its gates without drawing his sword. No burning temples, no bodies stacked in the streets, no final cries echoing through the walls, just silence. The kind of silence that only comes after something ancient has stopped breathing. In the months that followed, Cyrus would leave behind a clay cylinder, what the world now knows as the Cyrus cylinder. It spoke of restored temples, of exiles returning home, of God's return to their people, of a king who would be remembered for centuries as merciful. But history remembers what is written, not always what happened in the dark, because before the mercy, before the legend, before the empire called Persia stood above them all, there was one night in 539 BC when the Euphrates River disappeared, and the greatest city on earth died so quietly, almost no one heard it. And that was only Cyrus's beginning, because the next kingdom wouldn't fall to water, it would fall to blood.